This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
So Yosef makes the remarkable statement, which is a way of life, an outlook, a Torah outlook. And now, lo yatem shlachtem oisiyena. You should know that you didn't send me here. It's not your fault that I was sent here. Ki Elokim, it was orchestrated by God. Ki lemichya shalachani Elokim lifneicha. Hashem sent me here that I should be a source of sustenance for the whole family, to save the whole family. Says the Eitzes Penina HaTorah, the realization that the bad things that happen to a person is really for the good, and it didn't happen because of the person that did it to him or her, is a way to ensure that a person doesn't nurse grudges, a person doesn't harbor thoughts of vengeance, and harbor hatred in their hearts. It's not an easy thing. But Yosef is saying, Hashem wanted me down here. You didn't cause me to come down. And look, I became viceroy of the entire land. Incredible honor. So, there is, Yosef first says, and he says it twice. He says, first of all, you have to understand I was sent down here because of Midas Hadin. He doesn't say Ki Hashem. He says Elokim. Elokim is Midas Hadin. So he says, first of all, I blame myself. I spoke the Dibara. I made you jealous with the Kseinis Pasim, with the multicolored cloak. So I blame myself. He recognized that it was Elokim. It was Midas Hadin. He says it again. He says, I know there was a measure of Midas Hadin against me, an attribute of judgment. Also, Yosef says, we know that our forefather Avram were told that these wheels had to turn, that we were going to be enslaved and afflicted 400 years. Because Avram Avinu said, how will I know? So I know that there's an element of Midas Elokim. This, and it takes training, this hashkofas achayim, this way of looking at things, that even when somebody causes you distress, hardship, misfortune, it's not coming from the person. It's coming from Hashem. This outlook, there's a interesting attitude recorded in the Sefer Magid Meisharim. I've quoted from this Sefer. This is one of the most incredible svarim that we have. The author of the Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef, was privileged to have a chavrusa shaf. He was privileged to learn with a malach, with a celestial angel. And he recorded many of the things that the malach told him in this Sefer Magid Meisham. He called the malach the Magid. He would tell him things. And what the malach taught him, he recorded in Magid Meisham. It's an amazing Sefer. It's the teachings of a malach. You know, we don't remember what we learned from the malach in our mother's womb. But here we have a Sefer that records the teaching, and it's not, you could say, well, how do I know how accurate it is? It was written by the Baal Shulchan Aruch. The Beis Yosef was orderly and exact, so he recorded. So here we have a conversation that the Maggid had with the Beis Yosef about something unpleasant in the Beis Yosef's life. The Beis Yosef was a leader, and like many leaders, he had enemies. And these enemies said not nice things about him, and they provoked him. So the Beis Yosef spoke about it to the Maggid. So listen to how the Maggid placated the Beis Yosef. And I'm going to quote verbatim from the words of the Maggid Meisham. These are the words of the Malach. The Malach told the Beis Yosef as follows. Inyan akimois asher komu negdecha, pertaining to the people that stand up against you. Ein laharer. Don't let it bother you. Ki heim lo yazikucha. What they say won't damage you. To the contrary, elo ho'ilu lach. They will help you. Ki mi she'omer lashon hara al chaveirai. Somebody who says lashon hara about his fellow, menakin loy mizchu Yosef. They take away the Baal lashon hara's merits. V'noistan lezeh shedibar ba, and they give it to the person that they talk about. So you should know that when they speak bad about you, you're becoming enriched. They're losing schusim, and those schusim Hashem piles upon you. And then he adds, so the Malach adds for emphasis, Dover zehu emes v'yatziv. This is an absolute truth. And if people would know that when people speak bad about them, they're getting merit, they're receiving merit, people would rejoice when they say bad about the person, as if they won a lottery, as if they were receiving silver or gold. So the Maggid said to the Beis Yosef. In short, the Maggid says to the Beis Yosef, you should know, when these people talk about you, you should know that it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to have repercussions. To the contrary, it's a benefit for you. Because these people, when they talk bad about you, they lose schusim, and those schusim go to you. And he says this is an absolute truth, and if people would realize it, they would be happy when they hear somebody said something about them. Instead of being angry, they would be happy as if they received silver or gold. It's an outlook. This is Ashkafas HaKain. Now, I want to add two caveats to this. The first one is that shouldn't stop you from being Michael, the person that spoke bad about you. And so I'm not going to be Michael him, because if I Michael him, he's not going to lose schusim, and I'm not going to get schusim. No. As soon as they spoke bad about you, you got the schusim. That shouldn't stop you from being Michael, the person. And I can't emphasize how important it is to get into the habit of being Michael people. You know, in this week's Parsha, the Tzror Hamor makes a diak. It's a famous diak. Others make the same diak. Yosef tells the brothers, Va'ata, and now al teyotzu. Don't be sad. So the word Va'ata sounds strange. What do you mean, and now? So we could conjecture that Yosef was telling them, Ein va'ata l'loshen tshuva. The trick is not to be sad. The trick is not to be sad. The trick is make sure it doesn't happen again. Va'ata al teyotzu. You know, they say, don't get mad, get even, you know. Don't be sad. Va'ata, we have a klal all over Chazal. Then it says, Va'ata, ein va'ata el l'loshen tshuva. And the reason for that is because most people mess up by procrastinating. That's the biggest trick of the Yetzer Hara. The person is not getting so along with their spouse. So I'm going to have to repair this one of the days. Just, it's too busy now. I can't get around to it now. That's the Atas HaYetzer. One of these days I'm really going to have to start giving tzedakah, but not now. I'm going to have to start going to Minyan, but not now. Not now turns out to be never. So ve'ein va'ato el lashon tshuva. You want to do tshuva, do it now. Not tomorrow, not in a few hours, now. So that could be a simple pshat in va'ato al teyatzvu. And now, don't be sad, do tshuva. Make sure it doesn't happen again. But the Tzra Amor says va'ato al teyatzvu. You're not going to be sad now. When you come back in the Gilgul of the Asar Harugei Malchus and the Gilgul of the 10 children of Rabbi Yochanan, then you're going to be sad. Then you're going to be sad. V'ata al teyatzvu. Now you won't be sad. That's a diak of the Tzra Amor. And why? Rabbeinu Bachya says, why did that have to be an Asar Harugei Malchus? Why did that have to be the death of the 10 children of Rabbi Yochanan? Says Rabbeinu Bachya, because Yosef never verbalized, I am Michael you. Never verbalized that. Somebody speaks bad about you, it's really worthwhile to be Michael. Really worthwhile. I was going to say it later, but I'll say it now. There's a very important Zoya. The Zoya, by the way, is in Parshas Miketz, Reish Aleph Beis. The Zoya says that Rabbi Abba had he witnessed an interesting event. You know, there are people that are perceptive. They notice things. Rabbi Abba noticed things. You know, in life you have to notice things. You have to get messages. They say Yesh Kaina, Rabbi Akiva is Yesh Kaina Ilamai B'Sha'acha. There are those that acquire their life in one moment. And what does that mean? So it means that Yaakov Avinu, Rabbi Akiva, saw water dripping on a rock, and the water made a hole in the rock because of erosion. And he said, if water can make a hole in a rock, then the Torah could definitely penetrate my heart of flesh. So that was the moment. That was the moment that changed his life. But the word shah doesn't just mean a moment. It means to turn. Vel kayin vel minchosai loy shah. To Kayin and his meal offering, Hashem didn't turn. So yesh kainai lamai b'shah achas. There are people that acquire their world with one turn. They took notice. Like, for example, to Moshe Rabbeinu said, Asura na ve'ereh es amara agadol hazeh madua lo yifter asneh. Why isn't the bush burning? Rav Miller would always say, what would be to the history of mankind if Moshe Rabbeinu would have said, look, I'm busy with my sheep. There must be some kind of a thorn, you know, it must be some kind of, it's not flammable. You know? It's like the guy in the wedding that does dances in front of the kala and he puts fire in his hand and it doesn't burn. Look, ich hab nicht kein Zeit for this, and he would have gone further. Who knows what would be with the rest of the history of mankind. But he turned. Took a time to turn. You know who else took such a turn? Yosef. Yosef saw that the Saramashkin and the Sara'oifim, they didn't look happy. So look, Yosef could have said, 2 goyim in jail. I don't have time for them. But he says, Madua poinecha zoyafoy sayayim. Why do you look so crestfallen? He took a turn, so he heard the dreams, and then later he interpreted dreams correctly, and later they told, the Sarmashkim told the Taparo, he took a turn. It's Yesh Koino Ilamai B'Shach. So there are people that notice things. There are people that say, look, I don't know why, but I got to go. I'm busy. Got my own problems. So the Zohar says Rabbi Abba was walking in Lud. Interesting, because today we started getting that base, and we learned about Lud, Kfar Ludim LeLud. Kfar Ludim is outside of Eretz Yisrael, Lud is inside of Eretz Yisrael. You have to say B'fanei Nechtam. Mention it Agav, it's a great time to start Daf Yomi now with Masechtas Gittin. We are looking for a sponsor for Masechtas Gittin. If anybody wants their name mentioned, hundreds of people are listening on Kol Lashon, on TorahAnytime.com. Anybody wants to sponsor? We didn't have a sponsor for this week. 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. A lot of people listen to these shiurim, view these shiurim all over the world. If you would like to sponsor a share, please call me, 718-916-3100. So Rabbi Abba was walking in Lud, and he saw a man lying. He was obviously very tired, and he was lying on a mountain. And Rabbi Abba noticed that slithering next to him was a rattlesnake. It was too far for Rabbi Abba to get, and the rattler was poised to strike. And the moment before the rattler struck, a heavy beam fell from the tree, a heavy branch fell from the tree, fell on top of the snake's head, and crushed the snake. And the man was sleeping. Then the man woke up, gets up. As soon as he gets up, the piece of rock that he was sleeping on dislodges itself and plummets hundreds of feet down the abyss. Rabbi Abba said, this man's life, in front of my eyes, this man's life was saved miraculously 2 times in the course of a few minutes. So Rabbi Abba wasn't taking this lightly. He didn't believe in coincidences. So he ran to the man, and he said to him, listen, you don't know, but this snake was about to bite you. It got killed from a flying branch. Then you got up in a minute. If you would have gotten up a minute later, you would have been down in the abyss. You would have died horribly. You must have some special merit that you deserve such divine protection. So the man thought, they're recorded in the Zohar. The man thought, and he said, anybody that does something bad to me, I have a practice that I forgive them. I never go to sleep without saying, I forgive anybody that hurt me. Rabbi Abba says, oh, that's why. Such people Hashem wants on the planet. Forgiving people Hashem wants on the planet. That's Ashkafas HaChai. We know, Kol HaMaver Al Midaysev Ma'avira Mimenu Al Kol Pshav. Forgiving people Hashem wants on the planet. It's one of the great lessons of this week's parasha. But I want to add another caveat, another observation to the story that the Maggid told the Beis Yosef. Remember, if you walked in late, we said that the Malach, there's a Sefer Maggid Meisharim that records the conversations that the Malach had with the Beis Yosef. Beis Yosef called him the Maggid. And the Maggid told the Beis Yosef, when the Beis Yosef told him that there are people that are slandering him, there are people that are provoking him, and the Maggid told the Beis Yosef, don't worry, it's not going to hurt you. People that say bad about you will benefit you because they'll lose schusim, and those schusim will go over to your account. But I want to highlight from this something else. And that is, there are great people like the Beis Yosef that still have people saying bad things about them. And still have people out to get them. There are some people that say, where there's smoke, there's fire. If people have something bad to say about him, and it's not just one person, then he can't be so ay. That's not a Torah attitude. There are people who are great people that have antagonists. And there are several reasons for this. One of the reasons is that success generates jealousy. People are jealous of successful people. That's the way it is. There are people that are not successful, and they're jealous of successful people. Success breeds jealousy. Jealousy breeds dislike. But then there's another thing. A Jewish leader is very responsible for the people that he can influence. Part of being a Jewish leader, I go to a convention this year centered around the discussion of leadership. I spoke a few times at the convention, but not about leadership. And one of the responsibilities of leadership is accountability for other people. The Gemara says that a Rav is nitfas alan she'ira. A Rav is held accountable for the behavior of his city. It says a husband is nitfas alan she'beisa. He's held accountable for the behavior of his family. A Rav, his net is larger. And he is nitfas alan she'ira. He's held accountable for the behavior of his townspeople. Now, because of that, he has to tell people things that they don't want to hear. They don't want to hear. One time, I was a scholar in residence in a shul, and the rabbi told me, speak only positive. Don't say anything negative. Because if I say something negative, he gets complaints. But the truth of the matter is, a Rav is not a politician. A Rav is supposed to say, collectively there's not enough tzedakah. If everybody is calling out at an appeal for Bikur Chaylim $100, what do you mean? Everybody should call them out the same amount of money? The doctor should be calling out the same amount of money as the plumber? Something's wrong. Now that's not politically correct. Today's society, a plumber might make more than the doctor, but that's besides the point. But everybody's calling out the same amount of money, something is wrong, but it's not. People don't want to hear that. People don't want to hear that they're not being responsible to come to minyan. They don't want to hear. Therefore, when the leader criticizes people, the normal reaction is to find fault in the leader. Then you don't have to listen. And therefore, we have to know, just because there are people that have antagonists doesn't mean that they're doing anything wrong. It's a very big deal. Even someone like the Beis Yosef, one of the Gedolei Hador, told the Malach he has people that are slandering him. Now, one more comment about the Ato Al Te'otzvu. An important comment. The Ato Al Te'otzvu. And now, do not be sad. Says the Yagdal Torah that atzvus and kas beis achoyesei. Sadness, gloom, depression, and anger are sisters. They go hand in hand. Hashori atzvus bal lechlal kas. That somebody is in a state of depression, it's likely that the person will come to anger. That's a profound statement. It goes hand in hand. A black mood and anger. Now, it's important to know this because once it leads to anger, you say depression is one thing. Sadness is one thing. It leads to anger. Anger already, it says, somebody gets angry, he's going to need all the treatments of hell. And that's already a much more serious thing. Of course, then it's understood that if a person has a prolonged state of sadness and gloom, it doesn't bode well for marriage. First of all, the sadness itself doesn't. When a person is sad, he pulls down or she pulls down their mate with them. So that in itself is no good. But I want to show you an interesting thing. Etzev, sadness, is the same letters as Seva. Seva is to dye, to color. And when a person is depressed, everything that they see is colored because of their depression. The whole world looks different. When they're in a state of gloom, nothing looks nice. That's why Etzev and Seva is the same letters. And the truth of the matter is that's the connection to Kas. Because when a person is angry, everything looks different. That's why it says, Ein meratzin l'adam b'shas kasei. Don't try to appease somebody when they're angry. Because when they're angry, everything looks different. They can't see things clearly. A person has to get out of a state of gloom because it changes the whole way they look at the world. Now the parsha starts off, going a little bit out of order. The parsha starts off that Yehuda now, what happened at the end of last week's parsha, there was the drama. The goblet was found in the sack of Binyamin. So Yehuda said, okay, we will now all be slaves to you. So Yosef, in a seeming act of benevolence, says, oh, far be it from me. Only the one that we found, the goblet in his sack, he will be an Eved. The rest of you are free to go. Go back to your father. So now Yehuda comes, and Yehuda was a dangerous fellow. An angry Yehuda is a dangerous fellow. So he says to Yosef, don't get angry at me. And Rashi says, he started speaking tough with Yosef. Now you have to understand that's mystifying. Yosef just went lifnim mishur sadin. Yehuda said, okay, we'll all stay. Yehuda said, we'll all stay. We were caught red-handed. That's it. We'll all be abandoned. Yosef says, no, far be it from me to do that. Only Binyamin. And then Yehuda starts talking tough. So the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, the Alshich HaKadosh, they both say the same thing. Many say the same thing. That Yehuda understood that it's a punishment for selling Yosef. And he was willing to accept the punishment. Willing to pay the price. But when Yosef said only Binyamin, the one person that wasn't guilty at all of the sale of Yosef, then he said, then this is a cruel monarch. It has nothing to do with me, the Sadin. Now he started talking tough to the monarch. There's a problem with that, though. Even in the beginning, why should Binyamin suffer? Why should Binyamin be incarcerated? He wasn't guilty. So Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz says a different shot. He says when Yehuda was told by Yosef that we caught you. So he says, we all have to be slaves. Okay. I could understand that this must be the beginning of the Bris Bein Habasarim. It must be the decree of Kiger Yezerach Beretz Loilahem V'avodim Yinoy Samar Me'eshana. This must be the beginning of the servitude in Egypt. And it was already told to Avram Avinu, okay, you got to accept your fate. But when Yosef said only Binyamin stays, hey, that's not the Bris Ben Abasara. Only Binyamin, that's a cruel monarch. Then he was Diber Itay cautious. So then, he couldn't take it anymore. And he called out, everybody out! Out! And no man stood with him when Yosef revealed himself to his brothers. Remember, we've talked about this in the past. I asked you one year, I started off shir with the question, what was the biggest act of self-sacrifice in Chumash Bereshis? You ask 9 out of 10 people, and they tell you Akedas Yitzchak. If somebody is more profound, he'll tell you Tamar. Yitzchak was ready to die just himself. Tamar was ready to die with her 2 unborn children. But it's probably this. The Medrash says, when Yosef sent out all the palace guards, and he left himself alone with his 10 brothers, they could have wiped him out right there and then. 11 brothers. They could have wiped him out. Yehuda with Shimon and Levi alone could have finished off the job. He risked his life so that they shouldn't be embarrassed. It's the greatest act of heroism not to embarrass. And I told you that that's in Yosef's name. Remember all those years back when Rachel Imeinu named Yosef, she named him Osaf Elikim Escherpasi, my Yosef. Saves people from shame. He saved me from shame. People were saying, I'm the trophy wife. Leah has the children, I'm the trophy wife. Will always look pretty. Yosef saved me from shame. And Yosef saved me from shame because now if something breaks, they don't blame me. Yosef did it. But of course, Shema Garim, she was referring to this incident. How Yosef, to save the Shvatim from being embarrassed before the Mitzrayim, sent everybody out and risked his life. Okay. We know Rav Miller says a different reason why he sent them out. He sent them out because you can't have Goyim with his Hashras Hashchina. That's why we don't have Goyim in the Sukkah, because Sukkah has Kedushas Achil. There's a point after the lattice work by the Beis Hamikdash, Goyim can't come anymore. That's the Chil. They can't come. Now that the brothers were about to make up, the Shechina was going to be shayr on them. At that point of Hashras Hashchina, Goyim don't belong there. Vaitziu kol ish me'alai. But as I've told you many times, and it's so fascinating, we're all veterans of Torah. These pshatim you might know. But I heard another pshat over here in Oitziu Kol Ish Me'alai that's such a sparkling example of how the Torah is nidreshes b'shivim panim. When the Admor Menachem of Amshinov took over the Kisei Kvoid Kedushas Amshinov, and he became Rebbe, he was 18 years old. 18 years old. And shortly afterwards, he was also appointed Rav of the city. And the first Shabbos, when he was going to say his introductory drasha in the Beis HaKnesses HaGadol, it was a huge throng of people. And it was Parshas Vayigash. So he started with great hislavus, with great passion. And he said, Yosef said, Hoitziu kol ish me'alai. Said the Rebbe, you know what he meant? Hoitziu kol ishus me'alai. Hashem, remove all human emotions from me. when I reveal myself to the brothers, I don't want to feel any sense of vengeance. Now I'll get you back for what you did. I don't want to feel any sense of vindication. Take all the humanity out of me. I shouldn't act like a vengeful human. And the pasuk testifies that Yosef was successful. V'loy amad ish itoy. There wasn't any simple humanity in him. Bisvada Yosef elech, when he revealed himself. There was no, I got you, I showed you. Look what you wanted to do to me. And now let me see you. How you feel. You're under my control. There was none of that. And they testify that when the Amshinava was saying this, it was clear he was referring to himself, that as an 18-year-old, he shouldn't feel any feelings of pride, standing and darshaning to people 4 times older than him in the Beis HaKnesses HaGadol. That Hashem should take any issues out of him, any such human feelings. To me, the pshat, such so amazing. You look at a pasuk in the Torah and you see how many different angles of pshat there is in a pasuk in the Torah. Now, we know that when he was about to reveal himself, he said, Kshuna Elai, come close to me, Vayigash. They came close. See, they weren't going to believe him so fast. But he said, Ani Yosef, I'm Yosef who you sold. Only Yosef knows that he was sold. Ani Yosef, Shemachartem Oisihena. Now Yosef wanted to say it in such a low voice that Binyamin, who was the youngest and was in the back, wouldn't hear it. Because he didn't want Binyamin to hear it. That's how far he went. He didn't want Binyamin to hear it. He didn't want to embarrass them in front of Binyamin. So I'm telling you, this is a piece of information, a piece of the puzzle to the understanding of these parshiyos. And it's a medrash. The Tzror Amor brings down a medrash that Yosef corralled Binyamin alone and says to Binyamin, my dear brother from the same mother, when I went missing, what did your brothers tell Tati? He didn't know he had to hear what the story is. In order to fabricate something, he had to hear the story. He says, when I went missing, what did the brothers tell Tati? So he says, well, they brought your cloak, and they said, he was consumed by a lion, by a wild beast. So Yosef told Binyamin, that's exactly what happened. I was kidnapped by a band of hoodlums, and one of them stripped me of my valuable cloak. He went into a cave to deposit there, and we heard a tremendous yell, and he was devoured by a lion. And the cloak got torn up, and the rest of the people sold me down to Mitzrayim. Your brothers must have found the cloak. And that's the story he told Binyamin. He never told Binyamin. And that's the story that was given to Yaakov. Now, one of the things we learn from here, it has to be used very carefully. But we know that we're allowed to be Mishana Mipnei Hashalom. One of the caveats that we said to be Mishana Mipnei Hashalom is that the person that deviates and prevaricates is not getting any personal gain out of it. Here Yosef did it not to protect himself, to protect others. That's always the sign of being Mishana Mipnei Hashalom, not to get yourself out of trouble. Yosef didn't do it here to get himself out of trouble. He did it to save others. You see, when you lie and you say, oh, you know why I'm home late? Really, you stopped by a friend for a drink. Your wife is waiting an hour to eat supper with you. And you say, I missed the bus. You're Mishana Mipnei Hashalom. Now, that's not Mishana Mipnei Hashalom. That's why it says midvar sheker tirchak. Stay away from lying. Don't behave that way that you should have to lie to get yourself out of a sticky situation. That's not. Mishana b'nei Shalom means you're prevaricating not for your own benefit, for others' benefits. But here, that's why he prevaricated. And he did it. We all know that Yosef HaTzadik, who the first 17 years of his life didn't budge from Yaakov. You have to do the arithmetic. It says, Kol Mashab, when it says that Yosef was a Ben Zekunim, it says, Kol Mashab lomad b'shem ve'ever mosaloi. Whatever Yaakov learned in Shem ve'ever, he gave to Yosef. Now, if you do the arithmetic, Yaakov learned in Shem ve'ever for 14 years without sleeping. Right? It says, Vayolim Sham, only when he had the dream of the ladder did he sleep. 14 years he didn't sleep. We assume Yosef, until he was 17, slept. He was a growing boy. Yet Yaakov gave to Yosef all he learned in 14 years by the time he was 17 years old. So Yaakov and Yosef were inseparable. When they were down in Mitzrayim, the last 17 years of Yaakov's life, Yosef was never alone with Yaakov. So that Yaakov should never ask him, so tell me, Yosef, what really happened there? That's the real story. That's how far they went, that they shouldn't embarrass one another. It's amazing, the lesson that we learn. Tell people all the time, Yidden never embarrass one another. We have to teach this to our children. And I said it and I'll say it again. A wife or a husband that embarrasses their spouse in public, that's treachery. A wife that does that to a husband is certainly not an Eishes Chayil. The first thing it says about an Eishes Chayil is Botach Bolev Baila. Her husband knows he can count on her. If she's embarrassing him in public, then he can't count on her. Husband should never embarrass his wife in public, even if he's an angry in her. Should never say a story in public that will embarrass her. Never. Now here we have a mystifying thing. Vayagidu loy leimar. They were excited to tell Yaakov finally, after 22 years. Oh, Yosef Chai, he's alive, Tati is alive. Vayofig liboy ki lo yemen lahem. Vayofig liboy, the Ramban says he had a heart attack. Ramban says his heart stopped. Ramban says that happens sometimes from simcha, from joy. He had a heart attack. Vayofig liboy ki lo yemen lahem. He didn't believe them. Now, it's kind of unbelievable to hear your son is alive after 22 years. Never heard from him. But why didn't he believe them? It's a very mystifying. We know that the dreams, it says, Va'aviv shamar es hadavar. The father waited. Shamar means wait. Right? Like Shamra ala Pesach. He was waiting for the fulfillment of the dreams. When will it come? So we know by Yemoyin Le'isnachem he refused to accept comfort. He felt that Yosef was alive. So why v'lo yemen lahem? Why didn't he believe them? This would be the fulfillment of the dreams. This would be a reason to bow down. Why ki lo yemen lahem? This is, by the way, a big mystery. So the Chidah in the Midbar Kedemus asks this kasha. He says he doesn't understand. Why didn't he want to believe them? So the Chidah says that Yaakov believed bris krusa l'svasai. There's a covenant to the lips. If a tzaddik says something, it happens. And the Chidah says Yaakov knew this to his great sorrow, because he said, Im asher timtzeh eloyecha lo yichyeh. The one you find your truffin by will not live. And since it was by Rachel, she died. 36 years old. So Chidah says he knew. Yaakov felt with his very being, bris krusa l'svasayim, there's a covenant to lips. Famous mice in Eretz Yisrael, there was a Beis HaKvaros. that they just opened up a new basic verse. And a man said that he wouldn't mind being buried first in this basic verse. And a few days later, he died suddenly. Gotta watch what you say. Watch what you say. So says the Chidah, since Yaakov heard that Yehuda said, V'achiv meis, so he felt bris crucilis v'sayim, even though the mice is, Yaakov didn't hear V'achiv meis, he heard V'achiv einenu, but Yehuda said V'achiv meis. That's the way the Chidah learns. That's why Yaakov thought Yosef wasn't alive. I want to make a few other suggestions. It could be Yaakov did not want to believe that the Yosef he knew would risk bringing Binyamin down to Mitzrayim. After his mother died al haderech, and after Yosef was taken al haderech, he couldn't believe that if it was Yosef, he would have orchestrated having Binyamin travel down to Mitzrayim. He couldn't believe that his Yosef would accuse his brothers to be spies. He couldn't believe that Yosef would incarcerate Shimon. He couldn't believe that Yosef would put the money, plant the money back in the sack. These things he couldn't believe. It's only after they gave him the simon, the wagons, that the last thing they learned was Eglah Rufa, that he was believed in. Then I had another thought. When Yaakov heard that Yosef was alive, that could only mean one thing. That when the Shvatim said Chaya Ra Achlasu, they were lying. And when they said an evil beast ate him up, they weren't telling the truth. And Yaakov didn't want to believe that. So lo yemen lahem. A lot of possibilities. And now we come to a way of life. Again, a big way of life. Ooh. A way of life which is a big challenge today, in today's day and age. Vayomer Paro Yaakov, Paro said to Yaakov, Kama yemei shnei chayai. Different reasons why, you don't ask people their age. It's not civil behavior. There's certain things you don't ask people. But when Yaakov came, the famine immediately stopped. But Paro saw that Yaakov was old. He was worried maybe he won't last for long. Man looks very old, doesn't look like he has too much time left. He said, Kama yemei shmei chayai. Others say he looked so old, he never saw such an old-looking man. So he asked him, Kama yemei shnei chayai. Others say that he thought he was Yitzchak. Yet others say that he thought he was Avram. Some say Og was there, and he said, look, that's Avram, because Yaakov looked like Avram. So he said, Kama yemei shnei chayai. But this was a fatal conversation for Yaakov. In one conversation, Yaakov would lose 33 years of his life. That's a fatal conversation. What the Malach couldn't do, what Samol couldn't do, this conversation did. Shortened Yaakov's life 33 years. So we know the Medrash says that when Yaakov said, I'm not so old, my life is few and bitter and evil. The Medrash says that Hashem severely condemned Yaakov. Hashem said, I saved you from Esav and Lavan. I return you Dinah and Yosef. You could have possibly not gotten back Dinah. I saved you from Lavan and Esav. I return you Dinah and Yosef. And V'atam Mitzrayim, and you're complaining about your life? The amount of words of your discussion you will lose from your life. You were supposed to live the life of your father, Yitzhak, 180. You said 33 words. So instead of 180, Yaakov lived to 147. So we know the famous question. We can understand that Yaakov should lose for the Ma'at V'Ram Yemei Shtei Chayim. But why did he lose years for Paro's question? It's Reb Chaim Shmulevitz's question. Because he lost words even for Paro asking him, Kama Yemei Shtei Chayim. Why should he use that? So Reb Chaim Shmulevitz says that Yaakov let the Tsar cause him to look old. And therefore the fact that Paro had to ask the question, his attitude in life caused Paro to ask the question, so he lost years even for the question. That's Reb Chaim Shmulevitz's. It's really a severe way of looking at things. But I wanted to say a lesson here that we can sink our teeth into, I think, even more. And that is, Hashem says, when a person looks at his life, look at the bright side. Hashem says, you say you suffered from Esav, but why don't you look at the fact that I saved you from Esav? You suffered from Lavan. Why don't you look at the fact that I gave you all of Lavan's wealth? And you're left there with 4 of his daughters. You say, what happened to Dinah? But you got your Dinah back. What happened to Yosef? He's a vice right now. So what are we learning over here? When a person looks at his life, let him look at the bright side. Parnasa was shver, but you managed to put all your children in yeshiva. And you didn't lose your house to foreclosure. Marriage was tough, but it didn't end up in a divorce. You walked your children down the chuppah. Child raising was very hard, but your children didn't go off the derech. Look at the bright side. But if that's true, then what I'm saying is mamish not like Reb Chaim Shmulevitz. We're not saying when a person's going through the tough time, there isn't a bright side to look at. It's only in afterthought. So why should he get punished for Paro's question while he's experiencing the suffering? So I saw that Rav Nosson Wachtfogel, the great mashgiach Rav Nosson Wachtfogel, gives me a little bit of a hook to mention. Rav Nosson Wachtfogel was very, very, very close, a dear Rebbe, a Rabbi Muvik to my mechutin, Harav Ingber in Lakewood, and I could wish my mechutanim a mazel tov. We have a mazel tov. Our daughter Yocheved and our son Avi Ingber had a healthy baby girl this Shabbos, and mazel tov to my mechutanim, Rav Ingber and his Rebbetzin, and of course my wife. Shbi Zeicha, baby's name is Malka. Shbi Zeicha, that our little Malka should be legadla, leben Torah, lechuppah, l'maisim tovim. Rav Nosson Wachtfogel has a different approach than Rav Shmulevitz. And Rav Nosson Wachtfogel asks another question. How come this is the only place we find that Yaakov Avinu is complaining? It's only one place. I mean, it's one complaint. He's not losing years of his life for 33 words. So he says that that's because Yaakov had a conversation with a goy. And he let a goy influence him. The danger of the influence of a goy. And Nosson Wachtfogel is not saying that he was punished for the fact that he looked old. Look, he had sorrows. But for us, it's important to know, here's a person, he Baruch Hashem, he's living in a house, he put all his children to school. He says, Parnasa was always very schwer. But what about the fact that you did it? You did it. There are people that lose their houses. There are people whose children get thrown out of the classroom. Terrible, barbaric practice. Yeah, children gave us a run for our money, but they're all Torah-dik. They're not on Ocean Parkway in South Lake Drive smoking on Shabbos. Now we also see that from here that the Torah does not condone complaining. People complain to get attention. People complain to vent. The Torah says find a different way. We're Yehudim. We're people that should get used to give thanks. When you complain, you're not a pleasure to be with. We're supposed to be Mikabel Kol Odom B'Sever Ponim Yafas, a cheerful countenance. Our posture should be of good cheer, not complaining. This is something that a Jew has to work on, because otherwise, not as dramatic as Yaakov Avinu, none of us could live on that level, but otherwise it shortens life. That's the lesson over here. A attitude, a temperament, a posture of complaining is not good for one's health. And it's not good for one's marriage, and it's not good for one's relationships. Vayana aleim belechem. So now Yosef, the minister of agriculture, led them with bread. He directed their lives. The Maisa with Rav Zalman Sorotzkin, I had the zchiyah to be by Rav Zalman Sorotzkin's Levaya. It's in front of the Beis Yaakov in Borough Park. Not Rav Zalman, that was Rav Baruch Sorotzkin, his son. Rav Zalman Sorotzkin, the Aznayim LaTorah, was once in America collecting money for a yeshiva. And as he was collecting money, so the rich people said, we'll give you money on a condition. What's the condition? That you have to preach Zionism. You have to preach Zionism. You want us to give you money, you have to preach Zionism. So Rav Zalman Sorotzkin told them an interesting thing. He says, when Yosef gave food to the brothers, it says, Vayichalkel Yosef es aviv es achiv. He supported them. When he took care of the Egyptians, it says, Vayinah aleim belechem. He led their lives with the bread. It says, you want to give to a guy, you could give it with strings attached and tell them how they have to lead their lives. But when you give to your own, you don't tell them it's with strings. It's with stipulations. There it's Vayichalkelas Yosef. We have wealthy people that want to make. So you want me to give to your yeshiva? I have demands. Wealthy people shouldn't have demands. Let the yeshiva be run by the experts in chinuch. Your job is to be a mazik Torah. Your job isn't to control the Torah. I want to conclude with a story and an important lesson. I could die now. The dramatic reunion of father and son after 22 years. The famous story of a dramatic union between father and son. It happened on a Yom Kippur. In Yom Kippur there was a break before Yizkor, and a man went out of shul in Eretz Yisrael to get a breath of fresh air. He was a little bit faint from fasting, so he went outside. To his great dismay, he sees an old friend of his from Britain smoking a cigarette on Yom Kippur outside. He wished his friend a Gemar Chasima Tova, and he didn't make any comment about the cigarette. He said, you know, it's Yom Kippur, we're about to say Yizkor. maybe you come into shul. So this man, by the name of Robert, he says, I have no use for God. During the Holocaust, he took my only son, Yitzchak, and until he returns me my Yitzchak, I have no use for God. So the friend said to him, look, I understand you're grieving for your son. I understand you're angry. But have you been in shul since you lost your son to say Yiskafe? He says, I haven't been in shul for 40 years. He says, well, it's high time. I know you're angry, but do something for your Yitzchak. Come in and say Yiska. The man thought, and he says, yeah, I should do it for Yitzchak. And he came into shul. So his friend realized what an opportunity it was. There was a chazan in the shul. He goes over to him and he says, there's a man here who lost his son in the Holocaust. It's 40 years that he hasn't been in shul. Maybe you'll say a special chazon shekel malei for Yitzchak. He says, leave it up to me. He says the Kelmales, and then he says, Rabbi Say, we have somebody here who lost his son in the Shaya. We all share in his loss. And he says a chazon shekel malei. When he gets up to the name, he turns to the man who is now crying, and he says, Yitzchak ben Ruvain. He says, Yitzchak ben Ruvain. He says the Kelmali, everybody answers Amen. Afterwards, now the man is streaming tears down his eyes. He goes over to the chazan. He says, thank you. The chazan looks at him. He says to him, is your name Itzkowitz? He says, yeah. He says, Tati! Chazan was his son. He never was killed in the Holocaust. They were shooting and they killed his mother and he managed to escape. Father and son are reunited after 40 years. Says Reb Zilberstein, we go into shul and we think it's coming to us because we go into shul. You got a minyan in the morning, you're tzaddik. He says we don't realize that we have to say Yashikayach that we go to shul. He says David HaMelech taught us that Ani b'roiv chastecha havai veisecha, I with your abundant kindness I go into your shul. You know how many people are angry at God they can't go into shul? You know how many people live in places where they can't go to shul? I have to say thank you for being able to go to shul. We just had a Masechta Saita that the theme of Moedim D'Rabbanan, the Moedim that we say in Chazaras HaShatz, is that we say Moedim, that we have the smarts to say Moedim. So we say Moedim, what do we say Moedim for? Al Shanachnu Moedim Lach. We say thank you that we have the smarts to say thank you. So I had a thought about benching. In my benching today, when I was preparing this year, I ate a meal. My Rebbetzin soll sein gesund serves me a meal in the middle of my preparing. And I benched. And in benching, I realized, listen to what we say. What's the double lashon? We thank you and we bless you that we have the smarts to thank you. It's a big thing. Maybe the will of Hashem as we take leave of Hanukkah, that we have the smarts to be a Yehudi, instead of complaining, to be thankful. That merit Hashem should give us much to be thankful for. We have a few left, I think, of last year's Vayigash share. We have Vayigash from Emirat Hashem soon. I'll make copies. Again, a reminder that we look to have sponsors for this year. We haven't had sponsors now for several weeks. To sponsor, it's 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.